This meeting is being live streamed, which means this is Value After Hours. I'm Tobias Carlisle, joined as always by my co-host Jake Taylor, our special guest today. I'm energized from talking to him just before we came on. Phil Pearlman of the Pearl Institute. Phil, how are you?
What's up, fellas? I'm great. I feel really good. It's a beautiful day in the Northeast in the Hudson Valley, and I'm just very grateful to be on the program with you guys today. Thanks for the invite.
Well, we're very grateful that you're here with us. We just wanted to talk about your journey a little bit. You're a finance markets guy, and I follow you on Twitter. I follow your Twitter feed, and these days it's health focused. So maybe you can just talk to us a little bit about where you started and what the journey has been.
Well, I've been involved with markets from, since the 90s. I had a Daytech account and I was, trading JDSU before the NASDAQ bubble burst and began work. And then I went to grad school in psychology and became very aware of behavioral economics before Kahneman won the Nobel Prize. And from a psychology point of view, not from an economics point of view. So I was studying the social psychology research that those guys were doing way back in the day, 74, 79, early 80s when Thaler got involved. And I got approached by a hedge fund guy on a golf course in Brooklyn, Diker Beach golf course for people who are, shout out Brooklyn back in the day. And we were just talking about, you know, human behavior and so forth. And he pulled me in. I finished my dissertation, went to work for him, and sort of did that for a long time and got pulled away from psychology into markets. Markets are super stressful. I was never the health. I was healthy when I was a kid, but I sort of veered away from that with drugs and alcohol as I became an adult, and that only got worse with the stress of markets and the stress of my life. Even though I was making money, my life was kind of terrible in a way, and got further and further away from my health for many years. And and then I went and did many things. I got into social media and, I'm involved with startups and investing, and had a stint at Yahoo and worked with Tumblr. And Tumblr, we created this Tumblr finance thing. So I did all of that, and really got further and further away from my health and got further and further away from who I was when I was young. I was an athlete. I loved going out and playing ball all day. And so it wasn't until, about 6 years ago that I really started to, like hit bottom, realized, hey, I was going to die. I remember passing out a couple times when I was drinking the same amount as I had been drinking 5 years previously, where my body couldn't handle it anymore. I was in my 50s, and I was like, holy shit. And I was like 50 pounds heavier or maybe more. And I just was sort of like, okay, I gotta really, redo how I do my life. And so I got sober, started taking care of myself, started running races like with my son, who was like 9 and kicking my ass in a 10K or whatever. And got myself really healthy. And then I started this newsletter, Prime Cuts newsletter, and I found that and started writing about this journey, and found that I started getting a lot of really positive feedback back at me. Like, thanks for writing this, or I know exactly what you're talking about. And people who are further ahead in the journey than me who were reading it. And so that got me like, okay, I'm making an exit. I'm gonna leave finance completely, although I really haven't, because now my clientele, and now, a lot of advisors, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people in finance, but I stopped doing anything, like I stopped doing anything related to markets formally. As a matter of fact, I'm Mr. Vanguard dollar cost average guy now. I'm like VTI man. And really just started focusing on helping people get healthier. And also now it's sort of morphed more into helping people with decision making in general. I have a few clients who are hedge fund managers, and they're having problems, whether it's with tilt and it's market related, or whether it's sort of balancing life and not being as stressed. And I have a direct experience. I went through the same fire. So that's where I'm in. That's where I'm at today.
Let's just start with the health program. What's your philosophy about getting healthy, staying healthy? What are the big muscle movements that people can do to sort of get themselves on the right track?
My view is this, that, I have this sort of model of, okay, I have two models. One of them, and they're both very straightforward. One is just called stupid simplicity. And that is this idea that there's all of this research going on, and there's so many arguments occurring within health. And that's sort of at this level of the research and information. And then there's a line, and then above that line, there's the functional, and that's just what works. And that is a combination of what has been curated from below the line. So what is what does the research tell us that we know for sure? And N of one, like what works for us, what works for me personally may not work for other people. I mean, I have clients who are vegetarians, and I'm, on the edge of being a carnivore. And it's like, well, if that works for you and you can sustain that, fine. So this idea of stupid simplicity is just find the things that work for you, and that you are the chief scientist and the sole subject of the most important continuous experiment that you'll ever be involved in. And that is like, hey, if you eat something and you feel bad afterwards, or you go, don't eat that again. Like, it's just so dumb. And then the other concept that I really utilize is just this and it's also part of the stupid simplicity model. And that is that there's four elements of health. And you don't have to understand anything else. You don't have to know what mitochondria is. You don't have to know what your VO2 max is, or even what VO2 max means. And the four elements are just move your body, put, put real food into your body, get some rest, listen to your body when you need it. Like if your hamstring is tweaking, don't go out and run hard that day. Like, rest your body. And then four, love and community. And that's it. So that's all you have to know to do what I do. So I'm not a bright guy. I keep it really stupid simple, and I avoid all of these debates about, you know, is zone two better than, if you want to get fast, should you be training in zone two all the time? I don't really care. It's like, I like to run fast, fast for me to get faster. So that's what I do. And then, sometimes I run slow and I'm feeling sluggish, and that's it.
What's your exercise regimen? You like to run?
I run a lot. Um, I view I'm a monist. So I view everything as like mind and body is all one. And so I run. Recently I've been running fast. Um, maybe once a week I'll run slow. 2 or 3 times a week I'll run faster. I do a lot of like push-ups and pull-ups and some, dumbbell stuff. I have a little gym in my house. That's where I work out. I don't do anything crazy fancy. Occasionally I'll do, I have like some tricep things, and I have a little dip bar, but I just work out when I feel like it. Like, some days I'll do 2 exercises. Some days I'll do 8. Um, so I really mix it up, very intuitive. I take days off all the time. I'm 57 years old. When I wake up and I feel sluggish, or my body, like something is a little tweaked, the shoulders tweaked or something, I'll go for a walk. I do a lot of walking. I got Harriman State Park, like about a minute from my house. I'm in there almost every day, even in the cold with my dog. That one is huge, because that one is really about your mental health too, just getting out there and walking. And so I really mix it up. So I don't have, this is not like a routine thing. Like, I don't have a routine. Sometimes I just, whatever I feel like doing that day. I do have some cadence with the running, because I can't run every day. And then I like to add I like to add challenges sometimes. Like I want to run on 2025, I want to run a 24-minute 5K. So I'm just kind of doing that. One year I did a mile. One year I tried to do 20 pull-ups and I failed miserably. I got like I got like 17. So I didn't fail miserably, but I failed, but it was fucking awesome. Like a great failure because I could do 17 pull-ups.
Yeah, 17's elite. Pull-ups, strict pull-ups, strict bodyweight
Strict,
pull-ups.
dude.
That's yeah.
No, no, none of that
Ball
like
hang,
kipping or whatever. Yeah,
ball
just
hang to the bar,
dead
chest to
hang.
bar.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's good stuff.
What was the mile time you were aiming for?
Dude, I failed at that too. I'm gonna try that this year. I was going for 6:30 last year, and I got like 6:51 or 6:48 or something like that. And I think the tweak again. I'm my own scientist for my own experiment. The tweak I'm making now is that I'm doing a lot more shorter, faster runs instead of doing this zone two, go out and run 10 miles slow. I'm doing like these 5 mile runs fast and running faster towards the end just to see, like maybe that'll get me there. I think it will because I'm getting fat. Like I've only been doing it for a little while. I'm already noticing myself getting faster.
One of the things you talked about was listening to your body, listening to getting some feedback from your bodies. Can you just talk about that a little bit more? What's the sort of rationale?
Here's the thing there, guys. So we are living in a society, unfortunately, where we have lost connection to our emotional world. And we have very big brains. We have this huge frontal cortex with all these folds in it. We can think really, really well. And we do so very often at the expense of our emotional system, which is a basic part of the human condition. I mean, it's the most basic. I mean, if you go down to the frontal cortex is up here on the outside. If you drill down into the bottom of the brain, the most primitive part of the brain, that's the emotional center, like the amygdala or whatever. And so that part of us is in there. And so we're living in this world where we've really disconnected from it. And as a matter of fact, that big intellect is so prized, from the time from the time you're in third grade and you either go to that upper class with all this other smart kids, or you kind of go to that other class with, the kids that are eating paste. It's like one way or the other you're going and you become very, very aware of it. Then you take your PSATs and your SATs or whatever, then what college you get into, then what job you get, then you're sitting in a meeting trying to sound smart. Nowadays, you're on Twitter arguing about the stupidest shit in the world just to be smart. It's the same, that's the same argument you were having when you were in third grade. So, from my point of view, getting back in touch with our emotional world is really a superpower. And if we can do that and listen to it, so it's like interoception, or it's like what our body's cues. Are we cold? Are we warm? We see the same thing with obesity and hunger. Are we hungry or are we sate? Are we filled with energy or are we tired? Are we injured or are we well? Are we scared or are we comfortable? All of those are part of that emotional apparatus that we've lost touch with. We could tune back into that and begin to take cues from that, then we are really on our way. So that's what I try to do. And I was disconnected from that for a while, man. I remember early memories of of people saying to me, you know, hey, you're cold, put your coat on. You know what I mean? And I wasn't cold or whatever. Like that's the beginning of the disconnection.
Yeah, I do it to my kids all the time. Just, I wanted to ask you, Yeah, and they complain, no, I'm not cold. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I'm fine, right? That's them
I'll stop doing that.
pushing back
Yeah.
at, yeah, it's universal, man. It's a part of we're all a part of our culture. We all are doing it. It's not like a guilty thing. It's just normal, normal.
Um, when you're getting these, you're getting listening to this feedback a little bit more from your body. How do you balance that with, we've all got an inner bitch that sort of says, I don't want to do this today. I feel tired. And I think that sometimes, we probably listen to the inner bitch a little bit too much rather than how do you balance those two? Genuinely, you need a rest or you're just being weak.
You guys, me, and your audience are all overachievers by definition, by statistically. And part of the curse of the overachiever is pushing ourselves really hard. And it's not just a curse. I mean, there's two sides to it. It's also a blessing. We've gotten to where we are by pushing ourselves really hard. But at the same time, we get injured. I got a text from a friend of mine this morning and it was just a photo of his leg up on a thing in a bandage. He fucking got injured. And this guy is an incredible athlete who's in incredible condition. And so finding that line is impossible. It's never a perfect science. But if we know the next day we're going back out there, then we can afford to be patient. So I will err on the side of caution just because I've been injured so many times. And I get clients all the time who are super overachievers, very, very successful people who are, in their 50s, early 60s, and they have all kinds of injuries that they have to deal with. And they're going to 3 different doctors, and they have a knee thing, they have a hip thing, they have an elbow thing. And it's like, whoa, and they're looking for what more they could be adding. So, think about that for a minute. You know what I mean? So there is, as long as you're going to get back out there the next day, I think you can err on the side of caution without having to worry about that day off or falling behind.
This kind of reminds me of the ergodicity conversations that we've had in the past about, the ski racer that, really gets after it, but then they'll win a lot more of the races like 1, 2, 3, but they end up crashing eventually, and then they don't get to race in the races 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whereas the more conservative one actually gets to participate in those. So when losses lead to the foregoing of future gains is kind of one of the takeaways of ergodicity.
It's exactly the invert. It's loss aversion too. You can use that model that, what was it? What was the classic quote? Losses loom larger than gains. And so if you are a super elite athlete, I think that if you are a world champion skier, I think they're operating on a different model than we're operating. I mean, what is our goal? Our goal is at least mine, isn't to win a gold medal in the giant slalom. It's to be really healthy now, feel great, be a great role model, and then be healthy, when I turn 70, still, have my body operating really well. And so I think that is a critical distinction between the two. And so with the loss aversion, when we lose money, it feels horrible. It feels worse than making money feels good, right? That's the losses loom larger than gains. Exact same concept for injury for all of us mortals, even us really accomplished mortals. I mean, even us, even a really, really good athlete who isn't training for the Olympics. If you are over, 35 or 40 and you get injured and you're out for a month, you get a double loss. There's your losses, there's your losses are twice as bad. You lose the ability to work out and get stronger, and you lose the time that you would have been working out at that same pace. So it's a double loss and you fall farther behind. And that gets worse the older you get. So if you think about it like rationally, I mean, it's really hard to do, but if you think about it rationally, that listening to your body thing, that taking a day off thing, as long as you know you're coming back. I mean, there's a lot of people that what happens is they either get injured or they take a day or two off and then they take another day off. And every day you take a day off after your like third day off becomes more difficult to get back on and start working out again.
Let me give a shout out to the folks at home. Buenos tardes from Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. What's up, Danny? Boise, Tomball, Texas, Andhra Pradesh, India, Brandon, Mississippi, Indiana, Wollongong. Good effort, early start for you. Cleveland, Toronto ×2, Pittsburgh, Santan Valley, Arizona, Valparaiso. What's up, Mac? Breckenridge, Tallahassee, Gothenburg, Sweden. G'day from Lausanne in Switzerland, Winter Park, Florida, Savonlinna, Finland, Antwerp, Belgium. Dino in Townsville says most crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet, but many crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet, but most only have 4. Hamburg, Germany, London, Cincinnati, Ohio. Les Winan is in Sausage Gully, Australia. Good to see you've moved, Les. Jim Carroll says that he likes your pullover, Jake.
Cheers.
Bellevue, California. So my question, Phil, if you as you become increasingly sensitive to your own body, do you find that you're getting, is that how you sort of found your journey from finance to this point? You started getting Tom Morgan, who we had on the podcast a few weeks back, said, he gets messages from the universe, and now he's got a great little email service where he sends emails from the universe, which I subscribe to. It's good fun. Did you find that you were getting little breadcrumbs as you were sort of going along your journey?
There's no question about that. I mean, that's a great question. There was a day, so many examples of that. There was a day, maybe, I don't know, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, where I was really starting to get into body movement, and not just, like I could finish a 10K and I would go out and run it. There was this, like maybe 10 years ago, I ran this 10K, and they do these photos, like they try to sell you photos, like they get your number and they work with whoever's putting the race on, and then you get this email. And so I got this email of a photo of me crossing the finish line, and I looked like I was about to die, like I had this big stomach, and I was just like I was freaking dying. And that was a sign from the universe. You know what I mean? Like that was like, dude, you got no right running this 10K. It's the right idea. You're being a good dad because your kid likes to run, but what are you doing? Like, what are you doing, man? And so then about 4 or 5 years ago, I was in the Keys with my family, and I was reading this book about, as a matter of fact, I still have it around. I keep it like so close. I was reading this book called Buddhism for Beginners, right? And it's like, if you're a Westerner, like, really internalizing and grokking Buddhism, if you're a Westerner, is pretty hard, like, because everything's black and white to us. Like there's winners and losers, people who are rich and poor. And we're very sort of, modal, it's like either, okay, you're over here or you're over here. And so I'm reading this book, trying to really grasp. And there was this one passage about enlightenment and like trying to understand enlightenment. Like you read Siddhartha and he's getting enlightened. He's just sitting under a tree. You're like, you're from the States. You're like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? And the author, who knew his audience, was just like, enlightenment is just rediscovery. Like, that's it. Like, if you just think of enlightenment as rediscovery, you're winning. And like it hit me like a thunderbolt because I was rediscovering my athletic self. Like when I was a kid, I was an athlete. Like I was running around. I played, I'm from Maryland. I played lacrosse and I was just always outside with the ball with my friends down the street or whoever. And I had gotten so far away from that I was not myself. And so just this process. So when I read that, I was like, oh, wow, I'm getting enlightened right now. I didn't even know it, but that is a sign from the universe. I mean, it is really just a coincidence. I don't know, but I guess I was just I was ready to hear it. I was ready to, you know, understand and internalize it.
Um, I like the idea of mind and body being one. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the idea of how that expresses itself, and then maybe you can just add on to that. You used the word tilt before, which that's a poker term for getting emotional, but it applies in the markets just as well. That people get emotional and they do silly things in the markets. But is there some sort of interplay between, you let your body get so run down that you find you're in tilt more often or more frequently or more easily? I don't want to lead the witness too much, but
No, this is huge. This is a huge concept. And the work I do led me to develop this model that I call fitness alpha. And so there's all of this research, and I experienced it myself and have won, where as I was getting healthier, I was performing better across multiple modes of experience. I had more energy, professionally, much more effective. As a parent, way more effective, happier, more ability, a greater ability to tolerate stress because we live in a stressful world. All of these areas of functioning. And so Fitness Alpha is just basically taking this research, these things that we know from, from basic health research and applying them to the world of performance. And I put it in language that people within the finance world could understand, just calling it alpha. So fitness alpha is really just how much we outperform based on how healthy we are. So if we take, if there was two Phils, if there was the unhealthy Phil and the healthy Phil, how much better would the healthy Phil be performing than the unhealthy Phil? And there's so many areas of clear cut, so many domains of clear-cut outperformance from, and think about it. If you're managing money, think about these things. Our ability to focus is improved. Our ability to tolerate stress is a massive one. Emotional regulation and emotional control. Both those are similar, but they're different. But basically, it's our ability to, experience extreme emotions, and tolerate them without having them sort of bubble up into our behavioral world. And that's when we talk about tilt, that's exactly what's happening, right? So we're really upset about our losses. And instead of just being like, okay, we're upset, we're going to chill, we go, okay, we're upset about our losses. We got to get them back right away. We're going to double down. And that's what happens. You see an increase of risk-seeking behavior within the domain of losses, where you really should be seeing rationally the opposite. You should be pulling your horns in and taking less risk. And that's what stop losses are all about. So this idea of fitness alpha to me is just super powerful. I'm finding, I find a lot, it resonates with me personally, and it resonates with the money managers that I work with.
it's coming up to the top of the hour, which means that it's JT's vegetables. Mark it down, folks. Phil, there are people who tune into this show only for the veggies. So there you go. Top of the hour.
Well, I don't know if Phil might not approve of vegetables
pressure.
if he's nearly
No. I love
carnivore.
vegetables. I'm not a total carnivore, man. I eat salads all the time. Tonight I'll have an Israeli salad with chicken. Fiber's great. Recent findings that fiber lowers the risk of cancer. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I think I try to always match up a little bit of the guest and the and what we're talking about for the veggies. And so this is in the world of we're going to be talking about bacteria. So it's and bacteria are some of the most adaptable organisms on Earth, surviving billions of years, and really by doing one thing exceptionally well, which is mutating. And I think anything that's lasted billions of years is worth studying. There's just some proof in the pudding. So mutation is a bacterium's way of adapting to change, and whether it's a new environment, a hostile immune system that they're in part of, or a sudden flood of antibiotics, they have to be ready to really mutate. But not all bacteria mutate at the same rate. So some are like speed demons, and they're rapidly changing to keep up with their environment. Others are much slower, and they're making small adjustments. And the reason for these differences are kind of fascinating. So, for instance, the bacteria which causes tuberculosis has a very slow mutation rate. Why? It tends to live in relatively stable environments, and they've evolved a very robust DNA repair mechanisms to avoid subjecting themselves to errors in the DNA replication process. There's another example of a slow mutating bacterium that's I won't try to pronounce it; it's hard, but it's in the marine, it's in the ocean, and it's distinguished by its small genome and a low rate of mutation in comparison to most bacteria. So, and it's really this effective DNA repair that lets them do prevent excessive mutation. So they basically have a strategy of like fix it really well rather than reshuffle the cards and see what might become a better fit. So kind of two different strategies that you see Mother Nature testing out. Um, Now, on the other hand, bacteria that are facing a high stress environment, they tend to mutate much faster because their survival depends on it. And there's another interesting observation that might be relevant to a future analogy that we might make. Even within the same bacteria, not all parts of the DNA mutate equally. There's some regions that are hotbeds of change, and then there's others that remain steadfast and stable, and they resist mutation. So, all right, what analogies from billions of years of successful survival can we torture out of this? In volatile, fast-changing market environments, you might want to be more open your investment process to more change and flexibility. If the pace of the change in the world is really increasing, maybe all of us stodgy, quote unquote principled investors, like maybe we're in for a wake-up call. I don't know. So maybe if you're a VC or someone who's focused on really early business, early in their life cycle, where you might expect more change, if you're kind of on that bleeding edge, maybe you need to have a more adaptable investment process. And it's always kind of easy to make fun of VC community for bouncing around to whatever seems like it's hot. It's SaaS to crypto to AI, whatever the next thing is. But maybe that's actually kind of an evolutionarily sound strategy. I don't know. I think we maybe should be more curious and less judgmental about that. And then just like like I said, that there are those certain regions of DNA that are resistant to change, and there are other parts that should, those are the parts that should remain stable. No, there's probably also parts of your investment process that should remain stable and maybe wouldn't be subject to whatever's happening in the market. So call these kind of your core principles. And as Thomas Jefferson may or may not have said, in matters of principle, stand like a rock. In matters of style, swim with the current, just like a bacterium. Okay, he didn't say that last part. I just added that. But so I think it's kind of interesting. You might want to spend some time thinking about your own investment process and your environment and how much change would actually be appropriate. Like what would be the optimal amount of change that you might look for? And maybe here's some simple rules of thumb that might help. Look at your environment and the pace of change. If it's stable, maybe focus on refining what works. If it's unpredictable, maybe you need to experiment more. Protect your slow mutating core. These are your timeless principles, the anchors that ground your decision making no matter what. And I think it's an discussed topic in finance generally, but like how can you embrace the right amount of change at the right time? Too little and you're stuck in the past, too much and you risk following fashion and just kind of bouncing around, which we know probably doesn't work most of the time. So I'm just kind of curious for both of you, over time, I know that Toby, especially yours, you've made some tweaks and changes, and I know that there's a lot of firm principles as well. But have you thought about like why to change one part versus another, depending upon environment or what's being selected for?
Yeah, it's hard, but I've there are plenty of business biographies of investors who, in the mid 1990s, they saw the market getting extremely expensive for the first time,
Hmm.
got into cash, and there's really been no opportunity since then that would have like matched that same valuation as in if they were looking at say Schiller P or
Yeah,
something like
Kate
that,
definitely would have kind of
you'd
led
never
you
have got back
astray.
in. Yeah. So you need to be more flexible on that. But equally, as we all know, if you're always using whatever strategy or style is working right now, then probably you're going to trail because it's the nature of it. The law of ever-changing cycle says that the thing that hasn't been working is going to start looking a little bit better, and the thing that's been working really well gets a little bit crowded and starts working less well. So that's the tension. You have to be surviving without trailing too much. I don't know if there's any good solution to it, but Phil's been around longer than I have. What do you think, Phil?
Well, patience helps. But the thing that you really made me think about, Jake, while you were talking, and this is so out of left field, is Simone Biles.
Mm.
And the reason that you made me think about her is because she is the greatest example of dynamic flexibility that ever existed. She's incredible. And she came back after having a difficult Olympics and then came back and won later. That was part of that dynamic flexibility. But the thing about her dynamic flexibility that stands out to me is not the flexibility part, because that's like the obvious, like she could do, 10 backflips or whatever, whatever, but is the control component. So she's really combining flexibility and control both at the same time. It's a dynamic. I use that word on purpose. It's a dynamic process. I mean, think about that. Those are like almost you would almost think of them as polar opposites. Flexibility, control. But really for her, they're more of a dialectic where she's commanding both to varying degrees at the same time. And that is what you were talking about with the bacteria, with like in some parts of the bacteria, they're changing very quickly, they're mutating incredibly quickly, where other parts, I mean, that is incredible. No wonder they survive for millions of years.
There's a good idea in there, Phil, that the flexibility and the strength. That's one thing that I've been investigating a little bit is how do you get more flexible? And one of the kind of counterintuitive ideas in getting more flexible is that you need to get stronger. And it's that your lack of flexibility is your body trying to protect you because you're not strong enough if you get into that, if you get too stretched out, you just don't have enough muscle there. So a lot of the mobility guys, the kettlebell mobility type guys, they work through these exercises where the idea is to get stronger in that sort of stretch state, and that's how you improve your flexibility. Have you looked at any of that kind of stuff?
The thing I think about there, I just started doing a plyometrics program with my son for the winter. Like during the winter, we're going to get twitchy. Like that's the term the cool kids in plyometrics use. We're going to get really twitchy this winter. But the thing that you made me think about in that comment is that when we think about the word flexibility, we usually think about two things. We think about physical flexibility, which is sort of the Simone Biles thing, touching your toes, being able to do like a tree pose or a garland pose or whatever. And then this idea, and this is really pertinent to markets, cognitive flexibility. And that is having this ability to change our mind and not to get stuck in our own rigid conformational type of thinking where we hold on to a stock too long because we really believe and we don't want to let go. And then there's this third level that nobody talks about. So there's the physical flexibility, there is the cognitive flexibility, and then there's this other level that I call core self flexibility, where we're able to actually change who we are at almost any age. I mean, it's like if you're 84, maybe it's hard, but if you're 60 or 50 or 40 or 30, you have the capacity to fundamentally change who you are and how you operate and experience in the world. To me, that's really, really powerful.
I got a couple of questions from the audience, Phil, that I want to throw at you. The first one is, can Philip discuss any advice he has around mental health when dealing with financial markets? Any big connections between physical and mental? So we started down this
Yes.
path before, but yeah.
Yes. So I do this this presentation on Fitness Alpha for advisors, for, the layperson, for entrepreneurs, and also for market participants. And so there are things in the world, and especially in markets, that we can control and things that we cannot control. We cannot control rates. We cannot control price, even though we may fantasize that we can. But what we can control is this apparatus. This is part of our tool set for market participation, is our own body. And we can control that. And the healthier that we get, the more we know for a fact that we get better at being able to regulate our emotions, that we get better at being able to focus, that we get better at being more dynamic, like what you're saying about strength and control. We get stronger. We have more force, right? Like that ability to press a winner or take a loss. We have more stress tolerance. I mean, years like 2022 happen, I don't know, every 5, 6, 7 years. You guys probably know better than me. And you get punched, you get the crap beaten out of you on a Wednesday. You have to still wake up Thursday morning and go back into the office and turn the machines on and begin interacting with the market again and having clients. And so that capacity to do that improves. So improved metabolic health will help you in your performance in the markets all day long in ways you never suspected. There's a great book called Brain Energy by a guy named Pearlman, who talks about this, metabolic health and mental health specifically. But that trickles down into every other aspect. We're just one animal.
That's great stuff.
Palmer, great book. Great, highly recommend. Brain Energy, I think it's called.
That was from Tyler Farris, who's our unofficial producer. I got one from Lotto Allocator. What does Phil think about sleep tracking and using mattresses like Sleep Number or 8 Sleep to be more scientific about biometrics during sleep?
Well, my first choice is this. When you wake up in the morning, going back to the discussion we were having about tuning into how you feel, whether you're tired, and one of the examples I gave, whether you're tired or filled with energy, you wake up in the morning and you either feel like, hey, I'm ready to get up, or you feel exhausted, or you feel somewhere in between. And I think that's primary and comes before the quantitative self. And I think that the quantitative self can be great, right? I think especially with people who are, and this goes to the sleep example, people who are wrestling with drugs and alcohol. When like I'll do work with these guys, like incredibly successful people, but they're kind of like functional alcoholics or kindaholics, I call them. They're like not aware of how much they're being affected. So we do this thing where we take a look at their sleep data on days that they drink and days that they don't. And they see that they sleep, so there's a place for quantitative self. And, I've been using it recently. I got my buddy Parek is telling me AI and the quantitative self, you got to be on board. So I'm trying it. Never really wore a watch before, but now I am. And I'm finding myself getting pulled to it and so forth. I don't wear it when I'm sleeping. But if you wake up in the morning and you feel rested, it trumps whatever your watch is telling you, whatever your ring or your mattress is telling you. So tune into that. That's that's human intelligence, not artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I second that. When I had my third kid, I hadn't slept for about
You look great for it, by the way.
4 years before then. And I started getting, like, I just felt like I was not ever getting any sleep with the baby. So I got a Fitbit to track it to see if that was actually happening. And I found that the things that really affected my sleep, alcohol really affected my sleep, which was noticeable. So I cut back on that pretty substantially. But I also found that overeating cut back, really affected sleep. So if you eat too much just before you go to bed, that's a disaster. But the one that I really didn't expect was if you work out too hard, or if I worked out too hard, if I really wiped myself out in the gym, then I'd have a terrible night's sleep that night too, which kind of didn't match with what I had thought. As a kid, I thought you go out and you work really hard, and then you get a really good night's sleep, and it doesn't work that way. Either it doesn't work that way or it doesn't work that way as you get older. So I used that Fitbit for a while. I ultimately got rid of it. I got rid of it because I just found I was going back to it all the time. I was using it too
Too
much. So I had it for
obsessive.
2 years. Yeah, I learned what I needed to learn, and then I got rid of it. And I'm
Perfect.
best of both worlds.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. You ever notice that you have Google Map, like whenever I go on vacation, I pull up this Google Maps and I'm using it to get everywhere and I have no idea where I am. And like my wife and kids are in the car and they've learned the landscape, but I haven't because I'm using Google Maps because I'm the one who has to get us there.
Yeah, you're watching the map and not the landscape.
Right. Right.
I wanted to ask a question about there are cultures like Japan has this idea of forest bathing. I don't know their word for it, but that's the Nordics, or Sweden has this idea of forest bathing. They've probably got a word for it that sounds like it comes from an IKEA catalog, but I don't know what that word is either. You go for a walk, with your dog or by yourself through the forest. What's the research, or what's the feeling that what's the purpose for that?
For millions of years of evolution, we have been out in nature. And when the sun goes down and it gets dark, we sleep. And when the sun comes up in the morning, we're up and doing our thing. And then suddenly, 100 years ago or more, a little bit more, but a blink of evolution, in the evolutionary time frame, we began having gas and then electric lighting. And all of a sudden, we began moving away, further and further away from nature. So we are animals that require nature the same way we require water, or we require food, or we require connection with others. And that's my view. And I feel it every time that I get out. If I don't get out for a couple of days, if it's like raining or terrible weather for 2 days, I'm feeling very disconnected. And there is research in that area. But to me, the more profound argument is really just a basic animal one. Like every animal in the animal kingdom, their hearts are beating. Our hearts are beating too. We're just animals, we just have, like I was saying before, big frontal cortexes, but really we're just animals. We're going to die one day. The heart will, the original drum will eventually stop beating. And while we're here, being outside and circadian rhythm and all of those things are super elemental. And they're, again, culturally something that we've gotten away from over, 4, 5, 6 generations.
JT, you're a big advocate for the hike. Do you still have time to go on your hikes?
I do. That's my that's one of my preferred things in life, is to put the weighted vest on and go for a hike and listen to the Berkshire AGM audio. And I feel like I'm checking a lot of boxes at the same time, which is kind of what gets me excited. Is I don't like to just check one box if I can
That's
help it.
mind and body and spirit
Yeah, it's
all in
full.
one.
Yeah, all unified.
I got some good exchange in the chat here. What's the financial equivalent of fiber? BRK shareholder letters. Difficult to fully digest, but good for you. Good line. So Phil, what's a typical day look like for you? Are you waking up before dawn? Are you one of the advocates
Two
for
hours of meditation
4
and
a.m.
then
journaling?
yeah.
I'm the complete opposite of that. And all of that is just what I call fitness porn. Like fitness porn is bullshit. A lot of thick, but you don't need a thick book. You don't need, like I was saying before, you don't need to understand how mitochondria work. You don't need to know a lot of things. And you don't need to do, you don't have to have, in fact, routines, I hate routines. And so, there's no typical day for me, but I do generally wake up early. Sometimes on a Sunday morning, I'll just completely sleep in. But I usually wake up pretty early. I like to get outside very first thing. I take my dog out. We usually stay out there. Sometimes I'll chase her. Like she doesn't know how to play fetch. Like I'll throw the ball, she'll get it, and then she'll wait for me to come over, and then she'll run away. So it becomes like this zoomies thing. So that gets my heart pumping like right away. Then I'll go inside. I usually make my kid breakfast. I only got one left in the house, and so I'm just relishing every minute. So I make them breakfast, and then take them to school. And then I usually get outside. I'm usually back, either running or hiking in the woods, and I'm back before the open. And I don't really start with clients until 10 or 11 o'clock. Um, don't really eat black coffee, water. Don't usually eat till about 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I guess I do have some routines. I don't really think about it that way, but whatever I do, like some days, some days I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this today. Like today was a day where it's like, I've been really on this run fast kick. So like I just, ran, about 4 miles as fast as I could. And I was like, okay. And I feel great the rest of the day. So there is some variability, you know.
What's the drive for the intermittent fasting? How long have you been intermittent fasting?
I've been doing it for a while. I don't know. I've been doing it like maybe 5 years. And it's incredible to me because number one, it keeps me from eating in the evening. You were talking about sleep and eating in the evening. And if you eat right before you go to bed, your body starts working, right? It starts digesting, your body temperature rises. And when you go to sleep, you want your body temperature to come down and you don't want it to be working. So setting that limit of like 7, maybe 8 o'clock at latest, you stop eating, you give your body a chance to digest. In addition to that, it makes me more sort of intentional about what I eat and when I eat. And I love eating. So 4 o'clock in the afternoon, by like about 2:30, about now, I'm starting to think, okay, what are we going to eat tonight, man? What are we eating? And I'm like really thinking about it. And then 4:30, 5 o'clock, maybe I have something to eat. And it's like that first thing I put in my body is like good, like it's like grilled chicken or grilled beef. Or, today I have some like hard-boiled eggs sitting there. I'm going to eat those and then make dinner for my family. That's the thing. The other thing, and I don't even know if this is true or not, and I don't understand. It's like not one of those things that I can really feel or touch yet. But there's this idea of autophagy that when we don't eat for periods of time, our body gives itself a chance to heal. And I want to believe that's like a faith thing. There's a little bit of God in there, and I want to believe. And so if it's true, it'll be great that I practice it, but I'm not 100% sure because I can't directly feel it at least yet.
Yeah, I like the idea of I do a little bit of intermittent fasting too, and I think one of the things that it does is it just helps you separate eating for boredom and eating for hunger. Once you get used to being hungry, it makes it easier to eat for hunger.
That's a great point. And that is going back to what we were talking about interoception and how we feel. It's like you really tune into how you feel. It's like, I'm really hungry now, as opposed to, I'm sitting on the couch watching Netflix, just mindlessly eating Funyuns.
Just before we've got 5 minutes, Phil, and I realize we've missed one of your legs. So Tyler Farris, thank you very much for bringing this one up. Does Phil have any extra details on his love connection health advice? Any pointers for developing stronger family and friends relationships? That's a great point.
Okay. So here's the thing with that. We are, from the moment that we look into our primary caregiver's eyes when we are an infant, we are connected to other people. This is a relational view of the world, and I am a proponent. There is no personality without other people, you know? And so that is a fundamental, just like ants all work together. That is we are as fundamentally social and humanistic as ants or whatever. And so that part of us, we must nourish the same way that the same way that we put healthy foods into our body. And that means our family, that means our immediate family as we become adults. It means the family of our family of origin from the time that we're adults to the time that we die. It means our community. And, you were asking sort of before about serendipity, about things that I've sort of discovered that were true as they happened, or, like that Buddhist saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or whatever. It's exactly like that. When we reach out and we are willing, not just to our wives and kids, but to our close friends. I got a buddy I've been friends with since second grade, and he mentioned that his wife was ill. And so like I just reached out to him yesterday. He's like, "Hey, how's Debbie doing? How's your wife doing?" Like that to me is the thing, like those kind of things. I think you will find in that same way that the teacher appears, you'll find that you begin to function better. Things begin to make sense. Things begin to fall into place. We become more grateful. We become more thankful for our lives. Our mood improves. And so I include love and community in the 4 elements of good health. And it's it's really, really simple. You don't have to know mitochondria to move your body, eat real food, rest, and love, and be willing to allow yourself to be loved.
Yeah, I think that that community thing is a little bit under appreciated. It's not something that we talk about enough, but I think it is a very powerful thing. And I love that. I think there's a lot of problem with those blue zone studies, but it is pretty clear that those blue zones all have pretty good little communities. What do you think about that?
There's a great book by Waldinger called The Good Life that I would highly
Good name.
recommend. They did these, he is the executive director of a huge longitudinal study at Harvard that's been going on since the 30s,
Is that the
where they
Framingham?
studied, what's that?
The Framingham study?
Is that what it was called originally?
There's a really like multi-generational long-term one that's done
That's the one.
Yeah.
The guy, right. So it was that guy who started it, and they have expanded it. When they started it was low SES, like Southeast in Boston, and then Harvard students who tended to be higher socioeconomic status. And it was all male, and it was circumscribed. It was fairly small, and it was longitudinal. So it was going on over time. And they had so much success with it that they just kept sort of, building these concentric circles. Women in, the children of the original subjects, the grandchildren, now the great-grandchildren. And, what they found was that longevity and well-being were more associated with our connection to the people around us and to our community than, how many burpees we could do, or, what our VO2 max was, or any of that kind of stuff.
That's good stuff, Phil. It's been an absolute pleasure having you today. We're coming up on time. If folks want to follow along with what you're doing or get in contact with you, what's the best way of doing that?
You can reach out to me directly at pearlman@gmail.com, or you could just go to philpearlman.com, and that's the thing to do. Go to philpearlman.com. You'll get my Twitter. You'll get my newsletter is there, Prime Cuts. You'll be able to contact me, find out more about me. That's probably it, philpearlman.com.
You're also on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
Twitter, Pearlman, Pearlman. Yeah, that's a wild place, man. These days it's gotten crazy, crazy.
JT, any final words?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. Phil Pearlman, thank you very much. Folks, we'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.